Hello everyone, this is Crypto BitLaw, back with another blockchain legal brief, and today we're going to discuss how certain crypto firms, in particular Binance, are sticking with their operations in Russia despite US sanctions and global sanctions that are urging them to do the contrary and actually stop operating in Russia. But before we dive in, if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate that. With that said, let's see what these sanction defying tactics are all about with Binance and some of these other crypto firms. Here we can see MSN reports that certain crypto firms are under attack for sticking with Russia. They say pressure is mounting on the cryptocurrency industry to block access to Russians as economic sanctions push the ruble to the edge of collapse. The wide-ranging sanctions and a growing humanitarian crisis in Ukraine have sent technology firms, internet providers, and credit card companies racing for the exits. But top crypto platforms have held firm on continuing to offer Russian users a potential digital haven. Right? And so we can see Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, I believe. She said on Tuesday that she is writing a bill that would block the exchanges from facilitating crypto transactions with Russian addresses. The move comes as President Joe Biden unveiled a sweeping executive order aimed at clarifying digital asset regulations that includes provisions to solidify anti-money laundering and national security concerns. It continues, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is forcing many digital asset service providers to reconcile their aspirations for decentralized peer-to-peer payment systems with the realities of operating in a global economy that relies on government institutions and financial intermediaries. On one hand, crypto ecosystems have allowed Ukraine's government to quickly raise more than $60 million in digital assets to support its war effort without having to rely solely on banks or the bond market. On the other hand, it's also refocused attention on the degree to which bad actors can use digital assets to obfuscate payments and evade enforcement. That's one reason Ukrainian officials are urging crypto exchanges to block all Russian activity on their platforms. That request largely went unheeded. Binance, the most widely used crypto trading platform globally, characterized the request as overreach. While the company said it's complying with sanctions efforts and working with the U.S. and international authorities, a wholesale freeze on Russian accounts, quote, would fly in the face of the reason why crypto exists, unquote. With the ruble-denominated crypto trades surging, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong made a similar case, saying he had seen evidence of ordinary Russian citizens using crypto as a lifeline now that their currency has collapsed. He tweeted on March 4th, quote, many of them likely oppose what their country is doing, and a ban would hurt them too. 2 days later, Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Grewal, published a blog post saying the company was supportive of the Western-imposed sanctions and that Coinbase had already blocked more than 25,000 addresses, quote, related to Russian individuals or entities we believe to be engaging in illicit activity. Information on those addresses was provided to regulators to support sanctions enforcement, Grewal wrote. Those steps wouldn't go far enough under Warren's bill. In addition to blocking U.S. exchanges from taking on any Russian customers, it would codify a rule proposed by former Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin that would have required software companies and decentralized finance protocols to collect personal information on their users. Mnuchin's proposal had been opposed by Republicans and crypto trade groups. Warren's bill would likely face similar opposition. Quote, long-standing critics will naturally use this crisis narrative to affect the policies that they seek, said Miller Whitehouse Levine, policy director of the think tank DeFi Education Fund. Nevertheless, rampant speculation about sanctions evasion, coupled with a growing push among U.S. companies to sever ties with Russia, has forced some crypto companies to clarify where their services are available. The digital wallet provider MetaMask and the NFT marketplace OpenSea released statements last week clarifying that addresses located in sanctioned countries would be removed from their platforms. Circle, the second largest issuer of dollar-denominated stablecoins by volume, announced that it would disable all fiat payments from Russia-based accounts. In a blog post earlier this week, CoinCenter Executive Director Jerry Brito urged U.S. exchanges to continue servicing Russian accounts that aren't under sanction, arguing that to freeze those accounts would now cut off one of the last means ordinary Russians have to preserve their savings before they melt away in the ruble's collapse. That may frustrate those seeking to back the industry into a corner, but it's also foundational to crypto's appeal to libertarians and others wary of government surveillance, he said in an interview. Quote, "We've had a model of centralized payment and financial services that's been around with us for 100 years almost. That's just the model, and crypto comes around," Brito said. "It's the same in a lot of ways, but it's different, and it's going to take folks a while to adapt to that change." All right, so that was very interesting. Just some general thoughts and takeaways from that. Mainly, I guess, first would be the distinction between an international-based exchange that tries to operate in a DeFi manner and try to circumvent jurisdiction like Binance, their approach to these sanctions, as opposed to an exchange like Coinbase that tries to play within the rules set out by regulators. They actually try to work with regulators and follow the rules rather than trying to just kind of flat out avoid them like Binance does more often than not. See, when you have someone like CZ, who recently a federal court referred to Changpeng Zhao, CZ, the CEO of Binance, as an international ghost for the fact that this guy hops around from jurisdiction to jurisdiction trying to evade the actual jurisdictional authority of any of these different sovereigns, right? So therefore, he's the international ghost. He operates his business in much the same way, trying to frame it such that, oh, if we don't have a headquarters, you can't really sue us because we're not subject to this jurisdiction, and so therefore we're, in a sense, above the law. And, I could see the whole libertarian ethos argument where crypto was created to avoid a sort of centralized approach to regulating peer-to-peer transactions, which would mean that sanctions, centralized-based sanctions, are against that libertarian ethos. I understand that, but when you have pretty much the entire, I guess more than just the Western world, just all of these different global players looking, even countries that were previously neutral before, and players like Germany that have changed, policies that have stood for decades. When all of these different players look at what one actor in the world is doing and say, hey, what you're doing is so atrocious, we're going to, sanction you and make you feel the pain. I think it would probably be a good idea to, step in line and actually kind of come together with the rest of the world and look at this bad actor in the face and say, hey, no more. We can't stand for this. But, that's just ramblings on that. So I guess next would be the fact that it's not just GeoFencing that some of these service providers are imposing on Russian-based accounts. So, for example, with GeoFencing, the way that works is that if you have an IP address that is sourced to Russia, then you wouldn't be able to access a particular service. But what a lot of these restrictions are doing are they're labeling certain accounts that were registered and accessed services using Russian IP addresses and just restricting those accounts bar none, even if those accounts try to operate outside of Russian jurisdiction, whether it be through Russia's IP addresses, whether it be through a VPN or actually going to a physical location outside of Russia. Since those accounts are already linked to Russian IPs, those accounts are frozen. So I guess another thing is the fact that Warren, everyone's favorite senator, that I say in jest, Elizabeth Warren, is pretty much proposing mass surveillance collection of personal information to extend not just to centralized exchanges, but to DeFi and DeFi applications and protocols, right? So, everyone knows that when you engage in a centralized exchange in the United States, you have to do KYC, know your customer, AML. And so you have to give them identifying information so they know who you are, so that they can monitor what you're doing for money laundering and other sorts of violations of laws that have been set up. So she wants to extend this level of surveillance and data collection for personal information to DeFi applications. So imagine before you use MetaMask, you have to give Consensus, the company that is the parent of MetaMask, your driver's license and maybe your social security number. Same thing with something like Infura or various front ends that operate Uniswap. Before you use those protocols, can you imagine trying to use a DEX? Before you had to use a DEX and operate through their front end, you had to give the DEX your personal identifying information. It's just, that's nonsense to me. But, you know, people that claim to stand to be advocates of the little guy and the people, like Elizabeth Warren, here she's out advocating for this nonsense too. So, I mean, oh my God, she gets worse and worse and worse by the day. I mean, not only were this is the same group of people. Think about this. This is the same group of people that advocated for unrealized capital gains. They wanted to tax capital gains before you even realized a profit, right? So let's say you bought a house for $100,000 and the value of the house went up $50,000, you'd have that $50,000 gain. According to this group of people, they want to tax you on that unrealized gain before you even sold the house. So you would owe taxes on that gain, that $50,000 gain, before you even sold the house, before you even had a taxable event, as the current schema stands. So, I mean, it's just nonsense. These people, you know, Elizabeth Warren and crew just keep coming up with this nonsense, and I'm tired of it. People, we need to vote these kooks out of office. And I guess the last part would be, which struck me was the fact that Circle, the issuer of USDC stablecoin, is actively banning Russian addresses. I'm not totally surprised because I've seen this before with certain addresses that were involved in exploits or hacks. Major centralized stablecoin issuers, Tether and Circle for USDC, they would actually freeze those coins, right? So that the attacker that exploited and got access to those funds couldn't move them around. So we've seen that before with centralized stablecoin issuers, but now it's just really interesting to see that it's happening again as a result of these sanctions. And it's not just limited to Circle, as we've seen. It was laid out in the article. MetaMask and OpenSea have engaged in similar conduct, banning individuals and entities that operate in and out of Russia. So all in all, I think that this was an interesting takeaway. If you'd like to learn more, the links are going to be down in the description below. And please, if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We strive hard to bring you new, fresh content every day, and that would help us keep getting the word out. So with that said, thanks again for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you all in the next video.